Not only the first meeting of the year for us, but it's our first meeting. Miss Cindy Webb, our newest councilwoman. And welcome, Miss Webb.
Thank you.
We're glad to have you with us. If you would like, we always start with a word of prayer, the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd like, please join us. Good bow, please. Lord God, we bow before you and worship you for your magnificence and your grace and your love and your mercy. We pray for our decision tonight that it be
And
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now call this meeting to order. Mr. Garrett, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Hawkins.
Here.
Ms. Tucker. Ms. Mel.
Here.
Mr. Ledbetter. Here. Ms. Webb.
here,
Mr. Jones. Here. Ms. Isby.
Here.
Okay, you should have received copies of the minutes from the December 13th, 2022 City Council meeting. Any corrections, changes, or comments?
Make a motion for approval as submitted. Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as submitted. Are there any further comments? All in favor say aye.
aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0. I would like to ask the council, if they would, to suspend the rules for just a moment. And I'd like to bring something to your attention, see if we can take a vote on it. I'd like to discuss the waiving of our 3 readings.
Move for rule suspension.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to suspend the rules. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0.
It's okay.
Yeah, I have no idea what that was.
Yeah, I can slow down just a little bit. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, no.
I promise you, you're
Absolutely
going to catch and be running quick.
Yes.
I've visited at length with Mr. Finkenbinder on this. I've also talked to the Municipal League. I know that some other cities in Arkansas, what they do at the first of the council meeting is they suspend the rules and waive the reading on all ordinances, the 3 readings on all ordinances for the night. And that way we just go straight to discussion and vote. Now, I will say publicly that if it's something that is that's going to impact the citizens as a whole, please, no one take this out of context. If it were, say, on a tax or something like that, then we would go back to our normal procedure on that. But just for the normal business that we do daily here at the city, because it is imperative for us to make it as fast as we can for developers and builders and people who are in business in Conway to move forward. If we followed the antiquated system, which was really a good system back in the day because all you had was print media, then yes, I can understand that. But now we let people know by social media, by our website, and there's always plenty of time for discussion. So if that would be okay with everyone, that's something I'd like to try. And if it doesn't set well, then we can absolutely change it.
Mr. Mayor, as I understand it, we're going to do this before every individual meeting, or we're going to do it once tonight, and it's like a vaccination. It goes for the whole year.
It would be whatever y'all decided. I don't know, whatever procedure that you wanted to do.
I think we do it tonight for the whole year.
I think I understood the mayor to say that it would depend on the agenda.
If there's something there that we need to take our time on, but if just regular business, then I don't see a reason for it.
So since we are changing the rules, and I am in favor of this, not being argumentative, but at what point will we say we've got something on the agenda coming up that looks like we might have to have 3 readings?
We would say that the meeting before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir, just for that.
Felicia, help
clarification.
me stick with that. Shawana, both y'all. Okay, I'll take a motion to that effect. Anybody like to make it?
Second.
Have a motion and a second that from this point forward, we waive all three, that all three readings are waived unless something comes up that will require a little bit more attention.
Again, is this, we're doing it tonight for the year or?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good.
Okay, Mr. Garrett.
Ask a question.
Yes, sir.
How hard will it be if we need to change it?
That's
Another
Mr.
vote,
Finkenbein.
yeah.
Did we
It's
just,
another vote
if
about
it's
it.
something that,
Can I have one person answer at a time?
yes,
I got
Make a
you.
You
motion.
Pick who you want.
right here, who's evil?
So the council can set its rules as it does every year and can modify those rules during the year.
So I guess if I'm following you, Mr. Jones, should we have something that comes up that night, would we need to suspend the rules and say, for tonight's meeting, we're going to go by the old style of doing things and read three times? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I understand what we'd have
Okay.
to do with. I just wanted people to understand how easy it would be for us to fix this. That's the only reason I
Oh, okay.
suggested that.
Yeah, thank you. No, that's fair.
Oh,
Answering Mr. Finkenbein?
Did I answer you, Mr. Jones?
all of y'all did.
Okay, Mr. Garrett.
All in favor of waiving the three readings signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed.
That passes 7-0. All right. Next up, we have the Economic Development Committee, and I think Mr. Lacy, are you here? I got Corey. Come on up, Mr. Parks. If you would, state your name and address for the record, and Corey's going to talk to us about a resolution to approve an application for Arkansas Advantage for Turbar, or is it Turbar? Which one is it, Corey? Brad and I went back and forth about this.
I still haven't figured it out.
Okay.
So don't put me quite on the spot like that. Corey Parks, Conway Development Corporation. I'll go a little more in detail because I know that we have at least one new face in the room who's not been through this. So Advantage Arkansas, and these are both state programs, but they need the local, the municipal governing body to approve them. So Advantage Arkansas is a state income tax credit based on the payroll of full-time employees. And Faulkner County is a Tier 1 city. So the state, the Arkansas Economic Development Commission, has a tiered map 1 through 4 based on the socioeconomic status of that area. And so for us, we are fortunate to be a Tier 1 city, which that means our businesses don't get to take as high of a level of advantage of this program, but they still get to benefit to some degree. And so that's the first part, which is Advantage Arkansas. And then the other is Tax Back, which is a refund on sales and use taxes on purchases of building materials, machinery, and equipment specific to the project. So what we have before you is a company that is interested in adding 103 jobs with a average salary of just over $50,000, which is about $2,000 more than what the city's average median household income is, and about $4,000 shy of what the county's is at the household level. So these are good paying jobs, $24.10 an hour. That equates to an annual payroll of $5.3 million. And then they're going to invest $11 million in the equipment and the purchase of the facility. So we would appreciate your support in supporting Conway's longstanding stance of being pro-business. But with that, I'll answer any questions to the best of my ability.
Make a motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve this resolution for an application for, not going to try to pronounce it this time, for the, application for Arkansas Advantage with, it looks like Turbar Manufacturing. But like I said, Brad wasn't real sure and I wasn't.
That's my estimation, but we'll confirm it for the future.
There you go. Well, that's good news.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great news. Great news. Any further discussion?
What do they do?
So it's similar to U.S. compounding. So it's FDA shortlisted drugs. So the manufacturing of those.
Regional company? National?
That's a great question.
You don't know the answer.
Because yes and no.
Thank you, Corey.
There's a tie.
That's
But
okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Had to sign that non-disclosure, didn't he?
Other questions? Yeah, that's great about my work. I oftentimes get to say, I can't quite answer that. Other questions?
That's great news.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Yes. Mr. Garrett.
The resolution R 23, number 1. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed.
Passes 7-0. Council, you have an updated copy of the next amendment that's coming, or next resolution that's coming for you. Next one is a resolution to approve an application submission for the Grid Resilience and Innovation Partnership Program with Conway Corporation. Mr. Greg Dell from Conway Corp is here to speak to you tonight about this. This is a pass-through grant, Council. It is a large one. It's up to $29 million. Should Conway Corporation falter, which I don't see that happening, we would be responsible for it. So Greg, y'all can't falter. And as far as cost of the city, there might be some additional accounting fees tacked on later, but this will be minimal as compared to what this will do with what Conway Corporation can do with this. Mr. Dell.
You said most of it. It is this is the IIJA, or Infrastructure Investments and Job Act, that was passed last year, and there is money out there for grid innovation. This project would take a sub-transmission loop, or start the sub-transmission loop, which would allow us better to meet economic projects that may come up, industrial projects. Right now, when CDC brings us something and says, hey, there's a load that is this big that needs to go in this area, that's pretty hard to do. This would also add to our reliability up in the northeast section of town. Primarily, they're the furthest away from the transmission grid that's there. And so right now, all our substations sit under that transmission. And this would be our own loop that we could drop substations where we need them. The project, the first phase of this project, is estimated to be $29 million. We would have a 50% match on that, so Conway Corporation would have to come up with $14,500,000, and that is a project that we're planning on doing over the course of a number of years. Obviously, if we get this grant, it can speed that up. I would be happy to try and answer any questions if anybody has any.
I'm not worried about you guys defaulting.
Make a motion for the adoption of the resolution R23-2.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to adopt this resolution for Conway Corporation. Any further discussion or questions?
May I ask a question, Mr. Dell? Would this how would you guys, I mean, of course I'm new, but would this affect customers' billing in any way? You guys raising this money, or do you have it sitting there ready to go?
But we do have cash reserves. We do not necessarily have this money sitting there. This hopefully would be offset with industrial growth or customer growth. We have a planning methodology that we follow, and that is to have it there before the need is there. We're a RP3, or Reliable Public Power Diamond designation, and we'd like to keep that by being able to offer reliable services. We do have more difficulty up in that, like I said, that northeast section of town around CHDC and Walmart in that area, because it is so far away from the 161,000 volt transmission lines that come in from Bologna on the south side of town and then go up the west side of town. And so this will increase our reliability. We're not right now contemplating any type of rate increase for this, but that is possible in the future that those things would take place based on a lot of different things. This is just part of our ongoing policy to get the system in as good a shape as we can to meet today's needs as well as tomorrow's needs.
Thank you. Okay, reasonable.
Thank you, Ms. Webb. Any other questions? Mr. Garrett.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Passes 7-0. Thank you, Greg. Next up, we have Community Development. Mr. Hawkins, you're up, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and we have 14 items on this portion of the agenda. The first is a resolution to approve policies and procedures for the fiscal year 2023 for the City Council. We do this one every year, and rules and procedures have been included in your packets, so you can review them. I hope that you have done so prior to this. I don't see any major changes in anything, so with that, I will move that we have a favorable vote on this resolution, and that is in the form of a motion.
Second.
Can we have a motion and a second to approve this resolution for our procedures for 2023? The only minor change is we went to 30 minutes on committee meetings from 5:30 to 6. Should that run over, then we'll start the council meeting, a little bit after
And
that.
I'm glad you brought that up because I can recall 3 instances last year where people were not aware that our council meeting moves up if we
Mhm.
don't have
Yeah.
a committee meeting. And so they missed part of the council meeting. And so I'd like for us to consider having a fixed time for the council meeting, regardless of whether or not we have a committee meeting. Because it did happen 3 times that I can remember.
And this does this. Our council meeting will be 6 p.m. and our committee meeting will be at 5:30.
Every time, no matter what.
Yes, it doesn't change.
It's not going to change.
Nope, 6
So if we
p.m. 's
don't
council
have
meetings.
If we don't have a,
Right, we're still at 6 p.m.
okay,
Even with a committee meeting, we're still at 6 p.m.
okay,
And that came from some of that.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
And if you'll note that under the proposed city council meetings, this is going to be under the second paragraph, I believe. The first full page of the actual rules. City council shall conduct regular business meetings at 6 p.m. in the city
Okay.
council chambers. And if city council meets in committee, it will start at 5:30 p.m.
And so if we had to have, say for example, we're going to have a big, long discussion for a committee meeting, could we start it earlier if we had to? If we thought it was going to take more than half
Oh,
an hour?
if
I
we-
mean, you're right, most
right,
of our
yeah.
committee meetings don't last
Right.
that long.
Yeah, if we had to, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, but we'll make 6 p.m. to drop dead for
Okay,
council
so
meetings.
for everybody out there, council meetings will always be at 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Mr. Jones.
Mr. Garrett,
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
passes 7-0. Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance approving the private club permit location for Los Galatos de Faulkner Incorporated to be located at 1250 Old Morrilton Highway. We have an ordinance to be read for this item. It's ordinance 02301. And since we don't have to waive the readings
I'm waiting.
Make a
anymore,
motion for adoption of the ordinance.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance approving the location of a private club permit for Los Galat. How did you say it, Mr. Hawkins? Galatios? Anyway,
sure
so-
out there, didn't
he did.
Gallitos.
Galitos, okay,
Galitos.
thank you. So now, any discussion? There's no further discussion. Mr. Garrett.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Ms. Tucker?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Ms. Webb?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Passes 7-0. Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance approving the private club permit for Mally's Entertainment Nonprofit Incorporated and allowing for the application for the required permits from the Arkansas Alcoholic Beverage Control Division. And we have an ordinance to be read for this. And by the way, this is at the location of 1355 East Dave Ward Drive. The ordinance number on this is 02302.
Make a motion for adoption of the ordinance.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance approving the location of a private club permit for Mally's Entertainment. Any further discussion?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
The nonprofit part of Mally's Entertainment, what does that entail? Why do they have nonprofit status, but yet they need an alcohol permit?
Thank you, Minder.
Whether it's profit or nonprofit, they would need a permit in order to sell alcoholic beverages.
Okay, so where do their profits go, I guess, is my question. Is it a charitable organization? Is it a religious?
It's a business. But
So,
I'll have to, Jill, would you like to step up, please?
oh, thank you.
Yeah, that's a better question for the actual restaurant.
This was just the name that Dr. Thomas had requested the company be called, the name for the permit.
But it's not a 501c.
But it's not a 501c. No, ma'am.
Oh. Okay.
This was just part of the incorporation name.
Okay, that makes so much more
Mhm.
sense.
Yes, it has nothing to
Um,
do with nonprofit.
No,
Okay.
nothing to do with not paying taxes.
That is correct.
Okay,
That
okay.
is correct, yes.
That clears it all up.
Okay.
Thank
Uh-huh,
you
you're
so
welcome.
much.
Uh-huh.
I missed your
Thank
cake
you.
this Christmas.
Yeah. I'm
I didn't
sorry
need
you
it, but I
did.
missed it. Well, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett?
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Ms. Tucker?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Ms. Webb?
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
That passes 7-0. Mr.
That
Hawkins?
was, and that was ordinance 02, for those who are
Okay.
keeping score. The next item is an ordinance appropriating funds and approving and entering into an agreement with Central Arkansas Professional Surveying for the Conway Drainage Survey Project for the Transportation Department. And Kurt, good evening.
Good evening.
How are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you? Hope everyone had a
2023, and we're still doing it.
yeah. We're so far so good. So we recently solicited statements of qualifications for an inventory survey of our drainage system within the city, which would include all the culverts, inlets, and so forth. And we received 3 statement of qualifications, all very good SOQs from 3 engineering surveying firms. After our committee reviewed these submittals and scored them, and Central Arkansas Professional Surveyors came up with the highest score. So what we're asking tonight is that y'all approve this ordinance, and then we would at that point enter into an agreement, formal agreement with CAPS with a contract not to exceed $400,000.
This will be, this is some of our American Rescue Funds. They're starting a survey on our drainage for Conway. It's going to be a great project.
And yeah, I might point out this will be a very useful tool. We'll incorporate this into our the city's GIS map. This information will be available for developers, engineers, to research and get good information on invert elevations, pipe sizes, and so forth. And it will also be a very useful tool for us internally. We can, when we have flooding issues, we can better identify kind of what the root cause is, be able to quickly model those sections of the storm drainage system, and hopefully come up with a better solution in those areas.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance 02303.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion?
How were these scores obtained?
So
370 for caps and 361?
yeah, so we had, and I think we had four people on the committee, and 4 or 5 people, and then each, I think it was 4, must have been 4 based on the scores, because they were all scored from 1 to 100 in different categories. I think there were, like maybe a dozen different categories that are probably not that many, but, somewhere in there, 10 different categories. And then each individual on that committee scored the applicants.
These were professionals in this particular field that were doing the scoring?
No, they were city employees. I was on that committee as well. So.
Any further questions? Mr. Garrett?
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Webb?
Aye.
Ms. Tucker?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Passes 7-0. Mr. Hawkins?
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance appropriating funds to purchase property at 811 Court Street for the Chestnut Drainage and Sewer Project for the Transportation Department. And we have an ordinance to read for this item. It is ordinance 02304.
This is a project that we started visiting with the owner of the property quite some time back. Miss Mel was in on the walkthrough. We did some walking through downtown Conway. And this is our first step in helping the drainage situation in Conway, as you know, was MLK Park. This is the very next section. This is going to be the drainage going forward. It's going to be a kind of a piece process, but this is actually the first step in that. The building you see in the green there with the green roof, that is owned by Ray Kordsmeyer and his family. It appraised for $130,000. Ray agreed to sell it for that price. What our intention to be, what we'd like to do, is raise that building, bring it down, make it walkable, and also put a pocket park in there and add some parking there. You'll see that angle parking there. And then I'm going to let Kurt explain what they're going to have to do as far as the drainage and capping the ditch. But our goal is to be able to eventually walk from those areas there, walk across here and to Steve Strange's property, and go down by the old J.C. Penney. Some of y'all may not remember that. I know you will, Mark. You know what I'm talking about. And then we have another alley, back over by the fire station and the crepe store. So this is our first step. But if you would, Kurt, explain
Sure.
what you're wanting to do as drainage.
So our next project downtown will be Chestnut Street. And the utility relocation work is going on that project right now. If you look on the map here, we had always tentatively planned as part of this Chestnut Street project to definitely replace the structure that's under Chestnut, which is undersized and at a weird offset from the channel there that runs in that small alleyway. But we had also, like I say, tentatively planned to go ahead and close that in and kind of angle it over. Now, what's changed in this plan with the opening up the possibility to actually close all of that in with the purchase of this building. Prior to that, we had a little bit of a choke point, and we were going to have to leave part of that open. But now, as you can see, actually this drainage structure that I've got drawn in here right now, the parking that the mayor pointed out is actually part of the existing building and part of the building that would be removed. And then that would enable us to go ahead and kind of get this drainage, move it a little bit further to the north, and tie it into the drainage that comes under the buildings there on Oak Street. Now, this isn't really going to in itself. It's a baby step, I guess, in kind of creating. It's an opportunity to go ahead and fix the drainage in this section. Open it up more. There's still plenty of bottlenecks in our downtown drainage system, but if we continue to chip away at them, eventually we'll have an adequate drainage system downtown. But that's, when it's all said and done, that whole area, there would be no more open channel in that area.
We've already had some private business owners that own buildings in that area. Well, I say some. One who owns one of the bigger buildings say, "Hey, we'll have a mural painted on ours as soon as you get it done." So I'm actually meeting with Conway Corporation tomorrow with Kurt and Jacob, and we're going to ask Conway Corporation to pull us some electricity through there so we can light it so that it'll be walkable. And it'll also add 3 parking spaces down there on Chestnut Street. Right now, where the drainage comes out, it'll actually add three places there that we do not have. So we will be adding some parking, but it's a nice first step for some walkability and some places for folks to gather, as well as the main thing is our drainage. That's what we're concentrating on. This is our actually what Joanna Navajos did with her building, and then us, if y'all approve it and we buy that one tonight, that has allowed them to scoot the ditch over and move it, and it worked out. But because they'll be able to get your bigger equipment in. Is that correct? Your cranes.
We'll be able to. It'll be easier to get equipment in there to do the precast units that we were looking at, and it just it gives us the opportunity to go ahead and improve this all the way back up to the point where it goes back under a building.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance 02304.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance appropriating funds and approving the purchase of a property at 811 Court Street. Any further comments or questions?
Is the diagram of the parking and the green next to it, is that a set in stone thing?
No, that's very preliminary at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to
I-
illustrate there is
I
just-
figured it was
yeah.
kind of a preliminary, so I, just know I'm going to be really pushing for there to be more parking. Being a downtown business owner, so so I'm glad. But I figured that was the situation, but I thought I'd ask. Thank you.
Any further questions? Mr. Garrett?
Ms. Webb?
Aye.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Ms. Tucker?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
That passes 7-0. Thank you, Kurt. Mr. Hawkins?
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance appropriating reimbursement funds for the 2021 CLG grant for the Historic District Commission. Mr. Walden,
How to do?
good evening.
Good evening.
We couldn't, he wanted to come back, so we couldn't run.
Well,
He's working for us on contract labor at the moment.
I was gonna say, when's your new gig?
It's here. No, I mean I'm already at my new gig as well.
Welcome back.
I'm living in two worlds right now.
He came to town this afternoon for a meeting with Felicia and I and the Oak Street Corridor Committee. Then he went back to Little Rock. Then he came back here for this meeting.
Yeah,
And we're not paying for his gas,
I was
Mr.
fixing to
Hawkins.
say, I hope
No,
we're
no, no.
paying
We're not buying
mileage.
any
I was
gas.
about to bring that up.
well, you did mention that I started in Sherwood this morning. So.
Anyway, Mr. Walden.
Yes, so this is accepting reimbursement for the funding for the resurvey of the Hendricks Edition and the Conway Commercial, the downtown historic district. So every 10 years or so, our historic preservation plan has a recommendation that we resurvey these historic districts to get an idea of changes that have occurred to the buildings, et cetera. And so this is sort of accepting the reimbursement for the funds that we outlaid. It was a 100% grant.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance 02305.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further questions or comments?
Always great to get those grants.
Yes.
Yes, it is. Mr. Garrett.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Webb?
Aye.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Ms. Tucker?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
That passes 7-0. And I wasn't honest with y'all at the first of the meeting about wanting to change the 3 readings. I was concerned that Miss Smith was gone, and I was afraid there was going to be I was
There's gonna be
afraid
a big fight.
there was going to be a big
was.
fight over who got to point the 3 readings. It was a running joke with Miss.
Oh,
Miss
okay.
Smith.
I'm like,
No, Mary was quick on the trigger on the make a motion. So
okay. Well, I noticed the same people were doing it, and I was like, I'm going to do one. So I know.
You have to be bad
Lance,
Gotta
quick.
be quick.
already told me I can't
I
even
know.
Mr.
Might not even
Hawkins.
try.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance to rezone property at the eastern 10.2 acres located at 1150 Dave Ward Drive. It presently is zoned I-1. The requested zoning is C3. This was reviewed by the Planning Commission at their meeting on December 19th of 2022. And at that time, the commission voted 6-0 to forward this to City Council with a recommendation of approval. We have an ordinance to read for this item. It's ordinance 02306.
Would you explain to folks watching TV what it changed from
So
I3
this
to
is
C3
property
means?
that was formerly part of the old bus plant. Obviously, it being part of the bus plant, it was zoned industrial. The conditions of that portion of the corridor have changed a great deal. It's been a number of years that it's been closed, and so I've got someone that is interested in looking at the property to develop it for some different commercial uses. So this is actually downzoning it from its present industrial use down to a commercial use that I think is more appropriate with the current context of Dave Ward Drive.
Where will the ingress and egress for this property come from?
So it's large enough that it'll have one. I think there may be an existing median cut at that location, but in meeting with them in pre-application, we discussed the Dave Ward Access Management Plan with them and made them aware that it's going to be really advantageous for them to not only have that existing sort of the access there from the front of the property, but also try to tie in with some sort of access on German.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further questions? Mr. Garrett.
Ms. Webb,
Aye.
Ms. Mel,
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins,
Yes.
Ms. Tucker,
Yes.
Ms. Isby,
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter,
Yes.
Mr. Jones.
Yes.
That passes 7-0. Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance approving the annexation of 6.05 acres located north of Highway 319 and immediately west of 5580 Highway 319 to be zoned A1. And the ordinance on this is ordinance 02307.
Yes, so this is property. This is being sought in part for the benefit of our friends at Conway Corp. They've got some utility issues in that area, and so they were working with the Hendricksons on this and needed sort of a small strip of land. We had amended the annexation procedures towards the end of last year to allow for this type of, because they're not annexing the entirety of the all of the Hendrickson property. They're annexing a strip. It went through our review, and all the departments supported it. So, but it's largely helped support Common Core.
I'll make a motion. Oh, I'm sorry.
Luke Ferguson. For those of you who haven't met, I'm an attorney in Conway, and I'm representing the Hendricksons on the annexation, but he summarized it well, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer those.
Thank you, Luke.
And I noticed that we do have the release from the county. So with that, I will make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance 02307.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion?
No, wait. We're good.
We're good. It's fine.
Mr. Garrett.
Mr. Hawkins,
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Isby,
Yes.
Ms. Webb,
Aye.
Ms. Mel,
Aye.
Ms. Tucker.
Yes.
That passes 7-0. Thank you, Luke. Thank you, Mr. Walden. Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance to rezone property at 2505 Prince Street and 963 Ferris Road from O3 and R1, and the combined zoning is going to be an O1 zoning. This was reviewed by the Planning Commission at their meeting on the 19th of December of 2022, and at that time, the commission voted unanimously to send this to City Council with a recommendation for approval. And Mr. Walden, what can you tell us about it?
Yes, so this item is also linked to the application that you're considering for conditional use permit on B11. I think at one time, part of this property was intended for Eagle Bank to develop at that site. There's been several different iterations of development plans for that whole portion of Prince Street west of Ferris, and finally a lot of the developments coming to fruition with Shadrack's having presently been built. Don Pepe's is intending to build just to the east of that, and then now Whataburger is looking at this property. They've included a portion of an existing property that's R1 to the south. When we met with them initially, we said property is really tight for what you're trying to do. And so we encourage them to look at an additional piece of property. We encourage them to look at O1 because the O1 zoning would then allow restaurant by conditional use. And so
That's what I was fixing to say. Why did they not go for C1 or C2?
It was because majority of the development in that area has all been zoned some form of O district through there. Whereas like the
if we
PUD
have to do
the north.
a conditional use on it, what's the point? I mean,
Or for zoning it.
if we have to do a conditional use to get a restaurant in there, why would you not just?
I think it's potentially to address any concerns that might exist for surrounding property owners.
There's residential area just to the
Mhm.
south of
Yeah,
that,
I
and this
know.
would
what
provide,
could
this would
come
provide,
next.
if
Yeah.
it's zoned directly to a commercial zoning, then anything that qualifies for that zoning could go in
Go
there.
in there.
This provides those residents with some additional protections.
But go ahead. No.
Oh, that's all I have.
I didn't watch the planning commission, so I didn't hear all the stuff.
I got a question. What are the residents saying about that zone? They don't, had opposition?
At the planning commission for, I think, this particular application, there's one, I think, neighbor to the south that had some concerns. Principally, when we get to the discussion of the conditional use, they had some concerns about buffering the property.
They're here tonight with us, yeah.
And as part of the conditional use permit, we applied a condition or proposed a condition to have a 20-foot buffer, vegetative buffer between that property, because there's a drive towards that south property line. And so understanding that, hey, you probably want to have some level of buffer between the commercial use and the residential use in that situation.
Whataburger
Yes.
hours?
I think those are all, we can probably talk about that in the
Conditional use.
conditional use permit, because
They-
those are all conditions that are kind of
They
restricted
denied the
with that.
24-hour, and then Whataburger said that was a deal breaker. So are they still?
I think that's probably a good, that Landon's
Come
here
on
to,
up.
here to
Tell
talk
us
about
about
that. So,
No,
Well,
I just want to
on
know
the-
about
on
the
the-
hours.
All right, so the hours, it was asked at the planning commission meeting whether 24 hours was a deal breaker, and it is. And so it's my understanding that Whataburger's business model is a 24-hour business
Right.
model, not the lobby, but the drive-through.
Right.
And so nationally, if you go on their website, it says they're a 24-hour operation, except for Christmas and Thanksgiving. And the applicant here, WAB Venture, is actually contractually obligated to develop 40 of these across Arkansas going forward. And Conway is one of their first choices because it's a good place for business. And so they have already started one in Fort Smith, working on Searcy, Little Rock, and Conway. And if we can make it work, then we might even get a second Whataburger here in town.
So
But
wasn't the 24 hours denied though?
24 hours
Yes.
was recommended. It was recommended from the drive-through to be 6 a.m. to 1 a.m.
Right.
at the planning commission.
So
But you
will
guys can change
Whataburger-
that. Yeah, if 24 hours is not granted for the drive-through, then they're going to select a different location in Arkansas. And this is the location in Conway that they like.
Okay. Well, I mean, we promised all those residents over there when Neighborhood Market went in,
Right.
we haven't let them expand their hours. I'm just wondering how
Right,
kinda
right.
all that's
And we can
working
talk
out.
about that as much as you want with the conditional use. And I've got our real estate broker here for the applicant, as well as our construction manager. So, but yeah, the hours is a big deal, and that's just because of the business model.
Well, I got a couple things to say. Surprise, surprise. But I've been to a lot of Whataburgers before. I've never seen one.
Well, that's a good question, Mr. Jones. Actually, the one that was just put in Fort Smith, it abuts a residential neighborhood. It's a similarly situated property there. And I reached out to their planning staff earlier this week, and they have had no negative feedback from the neighbors since the Whataburger has been built there. And so, obviously, every location is different, but looking at the ones that are coming to Arkansas, I wanted to look at one that had just been finished, and that actually was similarly positioned in the city, and they didn't have any problems. So, and with the zoning here, Mr. Walden at the Planning Commission, and I believe he was getting to that tonight, but, this is consistent with what Prince Street is moving towards. Previously it was more of a residential area, but this is becoming more of a commercial and office corridor with Walmart and Chick-fil-A and Taco Bell's 24 hours right up the road. So I believe it's an appropriate zoning for the zoning issue. So I believe that that would be appropriate to pass the zoning.
Is the Russellville Whataburger in the same, that it's a different
That's
deal?
a different
Because it's not
entity.
24
Yeah,
hours.
that's a different
Okay.
franchise.
Mhm.
All right. Because I went and looked on the website to see.
Yeah, it's different.
And is the entrance to the Whataburger, is it on Prince?
There'll be two. Okay, so
Okay.
Prince Street and Ferris. All right.
Okay.
And so one of the reasons Mr. Walden said that we were looking at that we're under contract for that residential lot is to give cross access to Don Pepe's that's trying to build next to Shadrack's. Okay, and so
Uh-huh.
As a community partner here, Whataburger's saying, okay, I'll come in and we'll purchase this residential lot and we'll provide that cross access, and it'll help be an extra access for Don Pepe's as well. And so you'll have Prince and Ferris entrances.
Okay. Well, that is, for most of us that have noticed this, Ferris Road gets backed up. It is a bottleneck to say the least.
Right, and you know,
Especially that position.
right. But
Mhm.
anything that's going to go there, there's going to be a second entrance off of Ferris that's going to increase traffic. But I believe the Planning Commission, Mr. Walden gave an estimate as to the average daily trips, and it was in the 1500s or something. But national average transactions at a Whataburger is like 750 a day. So that doesn't necessarily correspond with the average daily trips that are presented. But I'm just trying to give you an estimate on the traffic there.
Oh, it's
But-
going to be bad.
Well, yeah. So
It's bad now. I mean,
yeah.
it's a nightmare.
But traffic wasn't the primary issue at the Planning Commission. The primary issue was the 24-hour issue. And so, but I believe we do have our neighbor here today, and I think that he might express concerns as to the 24 hours and maybe the traffic as well. But we do anything we can to alleviate the traffic, but that's why we have two accesses. So it's not all flowing onto Prince Street, not all flowing onto Ferris.
Okay.
So the traffic impacts in looking at it, these traffic impacts are based on the ITE trip generation manual, which tends to be a little bit conservative on the high side of estimating trips, which that's transportation engineers in general. But I would say it says generate based on that use being the most possible intense possible use of the site, about 1,766 trip ins per typical weekday. So when you consider what the traffic is for Prince Street, that's about 20,000 vehicles per day. So that's some of that, not all of the trips. It wouldn't, the way it would bear out when that gets built, it doesn't automatically mean 21,766. It means there's some agglomeration of that that'll be reduced, because if you're going to Whataburger, you might be going to Walmart or something else in terms of the trip ins with that. And then on Ferris, it's about 7,600. So that's kind of a gauge of the traffic that's on that. Ferris is typical for a collector level street.
We have we've got an ordinance for rezoning of property in front of us right now that we either need to vote up or down on, and then we'll take up the other portion of this.
Correct. Yes, sir.
That's okay. Is that all right,
I
council?
got
Yes,
ahead of
That's
myself.
okay with you?
Of course,
Very
of
good.
course.
I got a question.
It'll be on the conditional.
I got a question.
No, you're fine.
Okay, say if we vote and pass it,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't want it, if it's not 24 hours, then what happens?
We've got a piece of property sitting there at 02 or
01.
01.
We have
01.
yeah, we have
01
office
instead
property,
of-
office property.
Instead of
Correct.
commercial,
Mm-hmm.
which
Well, and right
sounds like
now,
that might be what's going to happen.
it's right now. There's three different zones for those three properties. There's a R1, a
Mhm.
03, and a 01. And so this, if the conditional use don't get passed, I mean, conceivably they'd be all 01, and so it'd be consistent amongst those.
Right.
But we're hoping that we can
Yeah.
get something worked out on the conditional use as well.
Make a motion to adopt the ordinance. I'll second it.
Have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance to rezone property located at 2505 Prince and 963 Ferris from 03 and R1 to 01. Any further comments, questions?
I know that
Well-
we have a neighbor here
Yeah, we're going to come on
And,
the
but
next,
we
the
are
next
going
section.
to, the
Yes.
conditional
Yes.
use, I think, is probably more appropriate with what your concerns are.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Isby.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, my concern is really the traffic problem. I mean, Ferris Road is going to have to be widened. So that's something the city will get to pay for. Whoever goes there, sounds like. So we're just putting money back for that.
We have a roundabout going in at Ferris and College. And I don't know about any plans in the near future to widen Ferris at this time, do we, Jacob? Or not at this time, we don't. We're going to build a roundabout.
Okay.
And I definitely don't want to sound like I'm advocating for the client. This is in terms of the policy. So in 2003, the city was one of the first in the state to adopt impact fees. So typically,
know what those are. Yes.
Typically with most cities, when a commercial development goes in, the developer is required to put in half-street improvements, which that ostensibly is meant to offset the increase in traffic. So in terms of when they develop, they'll have to pay pretty high impact fees for the property. That is meant to pay for sort of the impact of the traffic and distributed. That's usually spent, as the mayor said, on sort of capacity improvement type projects where you're either a widening or more typically it's been done as roundabouts. So.
Thank you, Mr. Walden. Any other questions? Mr. Garrett.
Be ordinance 02308. Ms. Tucker?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Ms. Webb?
No.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Passes 6-1. Council, before we move to the next item, in your packet, you need to swap items 10 and 11 so that we'll be back in order on this on Whataburger.
Mm-hmm.
You all have a copy of the letter that I sent and the new revised site plan. It might help if you don't have it. I brought extra copies.
Mr. Hawkins.
All right, so we're going to number 11 on our
11.
schedule.
Yes, sir. On
And
your
then we're going to
packet. Yes,
come
sir.
back. Okay, very good. Then at this point in time, we are going to take up consideration to approve a conditional use permit in an O1 zoning district for property at 2505 and 2515 Prince Street and 963 Ferris Road. This was reviewed by the Planning Commission at their meeting on December 19th of 2022. And at that time, the commission voted 6-0 to forward this with a recommendation of approval with a list of conditions. And there are 12 conditions that are listed there. I think that we will have some discussion on a lot of these. So,
And I do know, Mr. Hawkins, we have some neighbors here that would like to speak to this
very
as
good.
well.
And we would love to hear from them. Very good. Do we have a motion to?
I'd like to hear some discussion.
I was going to
first.
say, I'd prefer to hear some of the discussion.
We'll hear discussion first. Very good.
Okay.
Thank you. If you'll identify yourself when you come up and let us know where you live.
Roger McDougall. My address is 905 Robin Marr Circle here in Conway. And the property in question here is on 959 Ferris.
Okay.
So I bought that property and renovated, did some renovation to it and moved my 2 sons into it. So now they're paying me rent. So I've got my family actually in this home.
You're fortunate.
Over there. Well, yes.
If they're actually
You got your sons
you are
paying rent?
fortunate.
How did you do that?
It is like, I would highly recommend it. But
Now that's going to be, there's the intersection or there's the roundabout and your house or that house that you're speaking about is right in here. Is that correct?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you very
There's a
much.
house and then
And
there's
there's
a shop building there. A couple of things, I guess my concern about this is, listen, I'm as pro-business as anyone, and I think that's a great location. I just don't know personally if this is the best fit for that piece of property. Initially, when they came to the Planning Commission, I spoke against it, and one of the things that came up was putting the 20-foot green space. What they initially presented had about 2 feet from my property line. So it looked like to me, from what was presented, they flipped the building to where it's facing Ferris now. And there's going to be an entrance about 150 feet coming off Prince and about 150 feet coming off of Ferris, right there with the roundabout. I can tell you, sometimes it takes us 5 to 10 minutes just to be able to get into our driveway right now with the traffic congestion there. That is a concern. Quite honestly, safety is a little bit of concern to me too, because my concern is when it starts getting backed up like that, the way that this is configured is you're going to have somebody jumping right off Prince, coming right through that parking lot, jumping off of Ferris. And my opinion, it's got the potential to be a hot mess at some point in time. And, you know, as I stated to the Planning Commission, here's the thing. If I'd ask that you put yourself in my position or my son's that's sitting back there. Suddenly, you've got your house that you just renovated and you're happy with, and now you've got to drive through 50 feet from your master bedroom. So it's a little bit, you know, I'm concerned there's a drainage issue there. If you look at that property, it kind of drains from coming down Ferris, from Ferris toward my house. And twice in the last 6 to 8 months, my shop out there has been about a foot and a half in water. So whatever is done there, you know, I would ask that there'd be some consideration for drainage, that we get the appropriate drainage, because they had initially talked about a berm or something like that, you know, as a buffer zone there. But the noise and just the 24/7 is very concerning to me. I mean, it's my understanding y'all have had several come in front, I believe, as councilperson said, y'all have had several come in front of the council and try to get 24/7. And they've cited in the past Taco Bell. Well, the difference in my property and Taco Bell is I've got a residence there. Taco Bell is completely surrounded by commercial property that's not open and nobody trying to sleep at night. So those are, you know, again, I think it's a great location. It's probably a great location for the right business. I just don't know that this is the right thing for that corner. So,
Thank you, Roger.
thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak on this issue?
All right.
Council, would you tell us your name and
Landon
address?
Sanders.
Thank you very
And
much.
I'm at the Sanders firm on 306 Salem.
Thank you.
Yes,
Appreciate
sir.
it, Landon.
Thank you. I appreciate Mr. McDougall's interest in this, and I understand that he's the residential neighbor. I gave the example from Fort Smith a little while ago, and I do understand Taco Bell is situated differently with no residences surrounding it. We do have other businesses that have operations 24 hours on Prince Street, though. I believe Kroger has a stalker 24 hours a day. I believe that they have bay access 24 hours a day, and that abuts residential property. That's just right up the road. I understand the traffic concerns as well. I believe that Mr. Walden addressed that. But what this comes down to is, you know, these folks want to invest in Conway. It's going to be, well, they estimate it would be about a $3 million build, and conservatively bring in $5 million in annual revenue that's taxed. And they would bring upwards of 100 jobs to the community, which is big. And so they want to be this community partner. We just have to give them the opportunity to. You know, there's been a lot of talk on Facebook. I believe I attached some of those to my letter to you guys. Folks in the community want this Whataburger. But I do understand Mr. McDougall's concerns. We've done everything we can to try to alleviate those concerns with fencing, screening with greenery. We've offered mounding, that sort of thing. The only thing that we haven't done is agreed to purchase his home, which he's made that offer. So, you know, but we've done everything we can to be a good neighbor there to him and to Don Pepe's. So, anything that we can do with lighting, I believe the LED lighting would not be intrusive to his property. The sound, the way that this was the revised site plan is actually a lot better for his property, for privacy and for sound. And so I don't know if y'all have seen the old version versus the new version, but this is a lot more conducive to his privacy interest there at his house. So, with that being said, I don't know what else I can say about this, but it's a good opportunity for Conway. But if you guys have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
I got it. Yeah, I'm back.
Oh,
You said it's gonna be 100 jobs at.
Yeah, upwards of 100 jobs.
Okay, and another thing is, you were talking about Kroger. If I remember correctly, I've been on this council for a while. We had them put that buffer up there with the fence, didn't we?
Mhm.
And we would
It's
do
not
anything.
24 hours, is it?
Oh.
No, but they
I think
have.
at the gas
yes.
pumps, maybe. I don't know. Are
No,
they?
No, you're
no.
talking about the trucks coming in the stock.
Stocking.
Oh, okay. My
Stocking,
bad.
yeah.
Yes.
Thank
But
you.
it's,
But
yeah,
that's
it's,
on the south side.
Yeah.
it's not.
Mhm. Yeah. I will say, yes, I know there has been a lot of hype on Facebook as well. And I frequent a Whataburger in Louisiana when I'm
Right.
visiting my children. That Whataburger, of course, does not abut any type of residential area. Also, this morning, I made it a point to go down Ferris and veer from my normal travel to my office. And at probably 7:50 this morning, trying to navigate that roundabout with school traffic, people coming down that. I understand and appreciate what all Mr. Walden has said, but I think that is going to be, particularly trying to turn in from Ferris, a hot mess. And I have some of those same concerns. We have always tried to work between neighbors and businesses. I think we voted, of course, for the 01, but I think from this council, that's simply because that's what the current zoning is on there. So I don't want people to misconstrue the fact that we voted in favor of the zoning that's being sought, that was in any way, in my mind, any reflection of a 24-hour restaurant there. I think there are probably other areas I would welcome Whataburger here. I just don't think that this is the appropriate place for it.
If I can respond to that, that would be
Sure.
great.
Mhm.
Okay, so we have our real estate broker here, and I think he'd be great to answer the question about the location issue and comparatively to other locations.
Mhm.
But as far as 24 hours, I don't think this is going to cause a congestion issue between the hours of 1 a.m. and 6 a.m. when the planning commission voted for it to be closed. If it was to be open during that time, I don't think that's going to be a congestion issue. I do understand your concerns about morning time because of school traffic,
And afternoon.
and afternoon
And
school.
ball games.
Yeah,
And
yeah. But
Mhm.
we have a similar situation with Chick-fil-A on Prince Street.
Mhm.
Causes a lot of traffic. So I understand that. But anyways, I'd welcome David Elrod to come up and to speak about the location issue.
Yes, my name is David Elrod. I'm a real estate broker. I've been involved with the two previous Walmart and Sam's locations here in town. I was involved in the neighborhood market location, and I was also involved in the Sam's location. And both those situations were, as you know, our first location for Walmart, the neighborhood market, was to go to Pompey Park. And we were going to buy that 7 acres, or the whole 20 acres, give 13 acres to the city as a park, and keep the 7 acres for the Walmart. That didn't get passed, and so instead we went to the family's property that's right next to the ballpark. And as you know, at that time too, we worked extensively with the church, and they were very cooperative and worked with us. And we also worked with, we were going to put gas there where the Chick-fil-A is, and we decided the council didn't want that in the church, so we ended up putting the Chick-fil-A. But this location has always been, that corner has always been a little bit noticeable or contentious, however you want to phrase it. But it's worked we've worked with all the neighbors there over the time period. If you recall, this was originally going to be, this location that we're looking at now with Eagle Bank was going to be a come and go at one time. If
It was never going to pass.
Right.
That wasn't happening.
And I understand your concerns about traffic, but a lot of that traffic, if you go over there, is is a lot of school buses. And those school buses, there's a lot of school buses that go through there, and I've sat there and looked at them, and they may be a school bus that seats 30 with 5 kids on it. And I'm not saying anything about the efficiency of the Conway Transportation Department, the school district, but that could be alleviated some with good planning. But you got to realize that every intersection has issues. I live in Little Rock. We have issues from 750 to 830. There's not an intersection almost in America that didn't have issues. That's when people go to work. But all during the day, you're not going to have those same issues. It flows. Y'all have done a wonderful job with your roundabouts. It keeps traffic flowing through the community. There's not the stop and go of the community. And yes, Walmart has they have stalkers there at night. Kroger has stalkers there at night. Kroger has a loading dock on the south side of their property where they drop those trailers at different times in the morning that come in from Memphis for those neighbors. We don't have any of that. And it's hard to find a site in Conway, and I can't really think of one. If y'all know one, please let me know, that has an intersection on the corner that densely populated, that's anchored between 2 grocery stores. We've looked, for example, on Oak Street, which is a corridor that's one of the most busiest corridors in Conway. You can't find any sites because the owners won't sell the sites, or it's a bank was there and it's owned by an individual and they're not selling. So it's difficult to find a suitable site. And this site's been vacant for, probably 10 years now, 15 years?
Longer than that.
Yeah. And Mr. Pompey had the property next door, and they're redeveloping that. And even there too, I think a little bit further to the west, aren't they putting in a coffee shop, I believe? So, it flows well. The big thing you have on this property is you don't have people that are coming from the east are not, because of the roundabouts, they're not cutting across, so there's no stacking. So they'll flow through the roundabouts and come back through it. So we have cross access with the other owners too. If you have any questions, I'd be feel to ask, but it gives you kind of a history of our developments in Conway.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it.
Anyone else like to speak for or against? Council, it's back to you.
I'd like to say something is going to go there someday.
Something is gonna
I
go
don't
there.
know what it's going to be, and it's going to create traffic, whatever it's going to be. So, I don't know how the
bet
traffic.
it's not going to be 24 hours though.
No.
Yeah.
Well,
But you're going to have traffic there no matter what's there, and I don't know what we can do about the traffic.
let me step up for just a second if I could, and I won't bore y'all with much of this, but it depends on who you talk to, but I might have made a couple of bad decisions on this council since I've been on it as long as I have. One of them was the Taco Bell granting 24 hours at that location. And we can talk traffic all we want to, but the people that have property over there, I looked them in the eye years ago and I said, we're not going to put 24 hours on you. We're just not going to do it. We would love to have Whataburger. I think they'd be a great addition to our community, but I'm not for putting it that close to residential on a 24-hour situation. So that's where I'm coming from tonight.
And additionally, I was on the planning commission when the Walmart and all that went in, and we looked those people dead in the eye and said, we will not do 24 hours. And they came back several years later and asked for it again, and we upheld that. So I'm pretty stuck on the 24-hour thing.
I am as well.
I agree with you on the 24 hours, but as far as the traffic goes,
Yeah, I mean, it's
Something's going
traffic.
on there. Just like you
Yes.
said,
Yeah.
Laura. Just
Well, and if something was, I didn't mean to interrupt you, I'm so sorry. But I think it might be a good idea to get that roundabout built first. Whatever needs to be done to Ferris Road, done first. Then look at this property as far as putting something there. Because it isn't a matter of 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. that Ferris is busy or congested. It's the times I've seen it, it's been middle of the day. 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock. It's backed up almost to college.
we just have a lot of traffic in that
Yes.
area, period. Just
Yeah.
Conway just has a lot of traffic
Oh.
out there.
And
And
we-
no,
yeah.
no
I'm
way to
sorry.
get through there except for, I mean, the roundabouts have helped a whole lot.
Right.
But there's just a lot of cars.
Sure.
And I think something, like you said, something's gonna go in there. I just don't know that a drive-through restaurant is the
Oh.
best idea.
I don't,
Well, I don't think,
yeah.
developing the other roundabout has anything to do with the 24-hour status that we're talking
And if
about.
Whataburger says that's a deal breaker, then we don't have anything
You're
else to
right.
discuss.
Okay. Well, correct.
I most certainly do not want to get into Whataburger's business, but I do know that the owners of the property were interested in selling. That may be something y'all can work out with them. I don't know if it would change this council's mind or not, if that property were not there, but that may be an option for y'all to try to work out. Council, is back to you.
I'd like to make a motion that we pass this with the time set that the planning commission came up with, the operating hours.
Make a motion. That
was it.
With the, no, I'm not.
With the conditions.
With the 12 conditions.
Yes.
I'll second that.
And recall, and
So you can
Charles can
discuss it.
probably help us. With any ordinance or resolution, it's better for us to make a motion to approve it, and then if you want to vote against it,
Right.
it's a lot clearer to everybody watching. Yes, yes.
Yeah, and so just to be clear, on conditional use permits, when the city council reviews it, which is what y'all are doing right now, you have a number of options. The city council can grant the application as presented, which is what I think has been proposed with those conditions. Grant the application with other or additional conditions or restrictions, so you can modify it. Deny the application or remand the case back to the planning commission for additional consideration. So you basically have those four: approve it as presented, which would be with the conditions as stated at the planning commission and approved by the planning commission, modify it, deny it, or send it back to the planning commission.
Charles, if we were to have a positive vote on the 12 conditions that are here currently, what would our rule be on them bringing it back?
On who bringing it back?
If they decided to bring it back to look at the 24 hours, I think we have a rule that if you can't bring it back
If it's-
after a
if
certain
it's denied.
Yeah,
period.
if you all approve it with the 12 conditions indicated and that were passed by a planning commission, and let's say that they don't like that, they would have to go all the way through the process again. So it would go through public hearing, planning commission, back to city council, because it would
So
be an
is the-
amended conditional use permit.
Would they have to wait a year or no?
No.
Not for a conditional
Okay.
use.
No.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
you'd
what
have
I
to
wasn't
get,
sure.
you'd have to get 2/3 of this body to vote on that,
To vote in favor of
to
it.
vote in favor of hearing
Mhm.
it again. Yeah, so you'd have to have 6 votes. I
Conditional use?
think so.
As I understand it, James can correct me, if it's denied, they have to wait the 12-month period unless the council by 2/3 vote chooses to impose a lesser period. That's if it's denied, it would be considered
Yeah.
terminated, as I read the zoning code.
Okay, well, yeah, if you read it, that's exactly what it says then.
So we had this issue once before, not too long ago.
And if you all know it, I'm a little bit better prepared this time.
I appreciate that, man.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve with the 12 conditions. Correct? Any further discussion?
Sanders,
Mr. Garrett?
there we go. Okay. Call it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
No.
Okay, with the ayes, raise their hand, please.
Wait, hold it. We voting to approve it the way it is?
The way it is
With the
now.
12
Yes.
conditions.
12
With the- with
conditions,
the-
which
not the
does not
24
allow
hours.
24
Without the
hours.
24 hours.
Okay.
So with the ayes, raise their hand, please. 1, 2, 3. And the noes. Fails 3 to 4. So. Failed 3 to 4, so.
Sure.
Thank you. Mr. Hawkins.
All right, let's see. Now, we've got to go back an
Let's
item.
go back to number 10.
We've got to go back an item. That. And next item is consideration to approve a conditional use permit for 6.06 acres for property at the northwest corner of the intersection of Dave Ward Drive and South Country Club. This was reviewed by the Planning Commission at their meeting on December 19th of 2022, and at that time, the commission voted 6-0 that the request be forwarded to City Council with a recommendation of approval. And we have an ordinance to read for this item. No, we don't. No, this is a conditional use permit.
It's a conditional use.
Conditional use permit is what we're looking
Okay, and help me if I'm clarifying this right. This is to a conditional use permit to allow an automobile service station in a C2 zone for property located at 3200 Dave Ward Drive. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. So previously, the property was zoned commercial to allow development of harps. With that, we recommend that they go C2. There's a conditional use permit that's required for a fuel service station or automobile service station. We've got 13 conditions on here. With that, I think the main one would be development of the use would be arranged in a manner to provide adequate buffering and screening to adjacent uses. The planning director would be empowered to determine in consultation with the applicant appropriate screening and buffering requirements. So that is out of those 13 conditions, that's really the primary one there in order to buffer it properly from the adjacent property.
Harps is not coming?
No, Harps is.
This is the
Yes.
gas.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So was there any discussion about hours of operation, since that seems to be our theme tonight?
Not at this location.
The one out west closes by 11 every night. I mean,
Out
that
east.
was
No, I just
pre-
didn't know.
That was pre-COVID. I think they close even earlier now.
I do think we have some, do we have some folks here that'd like to speak to this as well? Come on up, sir.
Seth Jeffrey. I'm representing New Life Church, which is an adjacent property owner. First of all, Harps has been incredibly generous to us in conversations. We're very much in favor of them coming into this location. We do have some concerns from the orientation of the building from the Planning Commission. I believe the traffic report noted close to 4,000 cars per day on the impact to us. Their primary entrance will be our private drive, not Country Club. And what we are asking the council is to help us reconsider. We want this to happen. We're excited about it. And again, Harps has been incredible to work with, much different than the last item on the agenda tonight. So they've been very generous to us in everything that we've asked for. But we're very concerned about the private drive and the amount of cars on our private drive that runs down the middle of our property. So with the current configuration, it would route almost all traffic to the front of the building, which would be on that private drive. We're also concerned, we do have a daycare operating on our facility. We're concerned about anybody that may pull through our parking lot, including 18-wheeler traffic, to the Harps because of the orientation of the building. What we would prefer is that the Harps would face Country Club and any improvements be made to Country Club to allow that to happen in that fashion.
Have y'all been in conversation with Harps about this?
Harps is more than willing, and Sarah with Harps Corporation is here. She'll attest to this in just a moment. This is the city's desire, or the Planning Commission specifically's desire, to make sure that the Dave Ward corridor is correct. James, I want you to speak to that because I don't want to put words in your mouth. But yes, the Harps Corporation is fine with either orientation from our previous conversation.
Yeah. Any questions from New Life? Ma'am, would you like to come up and speak? You state your name and address, please, for the record.
Sarah Hopper, 918 South Gutenson in Springdale. And I'm here representing Harps, and what Seth said is accurate, that we are okay with facing west or east. But through working with the Planning Commission, they've asked us to change that orientation. And so we're okay with either. We just want all the parties to be happy with what we do.
So it's the planning department, not the planning commission, that has a problem with the way you want to turn it? Is that what
Yes,
I
and there's
understand?
some specific reasons that they've given for that. But for this project to work, we do have to have New Life support.
Right.
So we won't be able to do it without their support.
So I can get this right in my head. I know that New Life has an ingress and egress off of Country Club. Would y'all add a new one?
Yes, I think we would be able to have one drive off of Country Club. But that would, I'm trying to make sure I say the direction right. I think right now we would be facing west, and so it would kind of come into the back of the store, which I think is what the church's concern is that most people are going to want to drive around to the front, to the parking lot.
Okay.
And use the access drive. And we're not able to get another drive off of Dave Ward.
Yeah, that would require a pretty good act. That would require the State Highway Board of Directors. Is that correct? Yeah, as well as the city and RDOT.
Yeah, because we would be willing to do, a ride-in sweep or anything like that. But from my understanding, that's not really an item that they can be flexible on.
James, would you give
Tell us about
the
that,
planning
James.
department's thoughts on
Yeah.
this, please?
In meeting with the applicant, we looked at several things in considering this. Doing a path analysis, if you're coming from the south, the most convenient way to enter the property is off of South Country Club. If you're coming from the east on Dave Ward, you would likely split trips between Country Club and the New Life access. If you're coming from eastbound on Dave Ward, so heading towards the east on Dave Ward, you would likely turn at the light, go on to Country Club. If you're coming from Country Club, you would likely enter from Country Club. So I think my consideration, in evaluating that and having, I used to live in Capitol View, and we'd go up to the Fancy Kroger on Cantrell, and we always entered through the back. We never entered through Cantrell because it was the more convenient way to access it. Was off.
So which way is Harps facing? In the way you want it done?
So
right now?
in
It's
the
facing Dave Ward?
scenario in which what's favorable to New Life would be for the front of the facility to face towards Country Club. The considerations that in looking at this, planning department has said it would likely have fewer impacts and be visually better for the entirety if it faced towards the New Life Drive.
Okay, so it's not going to face Dave Ward regardless. It's going to face.
We would be absolutely elated if it could.
Face Dave
Yeah, Harps has said that's a non-starter. Yeah, so that's where we started out first.
I got you.
Our consideration in looking at that, and we had them present us various renderings. If it is oriented back towards Country Club, then one of the primary views, if you're coming from the west and looking up into that site, you'll see a large loading area, which is not necessarily the most attractive view of the facility. Additionally, if you're coming from the east, and the main entrance there of New Life is a little bit of a terminating vista off of that driveway. If it were oriented in a way where the structure faced towards the New Life Drive and the majority of it was placed back closer to Country Club, it would have a better view shed in terms of looking at when you're coming on from the east on Dave Ward, actually being able to see New Life's campus because of all the buffering requirements and it being a loading area, that area, the New Life Drive, we would require pretty heavy evergreen screening. So it would do a lot to block the view of New Life coming from the east. So that was really, I think, the planning department's primary considerations is just from a site design standpoint, accommodating that. Those things are not specifically a direct condition, I don't think, as part of this, as part of the conditional use. It's really, those were things that were going to be finally and absolutely hammered out as part of the development review application. But I'll say I think it would be an unfortunate circumstance for it to not face the New Life driveway. So
we have
So going west down Dave Ward, you're going to come up on that corner and see the back of Hart.
you would really, what you'd be more likely to see in that situation is the gas.
We have a unique situation here in that we have Harps and the church getting along quite well and wanting to work together. And I think we go ahead and let them go with the plan that they have. The Harps, from what I understand, is willing to work with the city as well on Country Club. And we as a city realize we've got to finish up from the bridge south there as well. So my personal view, and I don't express a whole lot of things like this is pretty easy.
Yeah.
Let them move
That's what I
forward.
was thinking.
If they're in agreement, what
Yeah.
be like Dad used to do me when I come in late or something.
Was it Jeffrey? Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you okay with just getting with our planning department and working this out that where it's best for y'all? Because we don't appear to have anybody butting heads on this.
Y'all's planning department has a lot of rules, but they're extremely easy to work with, and I have no problem working with them. The planning department's amazing. We happen to disagree on this one item, but honestly, they're a huge help to New Life as a whole. I work with them on a regular basis.
Tell me again which way you would rather.
Yeah, if y'all want to look at the screen just so everybody's on the same page,
Yeah.
basically what we would like is the back of the building the back of the building currently, as the planning department has recommended, the back of the building would be closest to Country Club Road, and it would face out towards
your property.
That's correct.
Okay.
And what mainly for traffic count reasons, I actually agree with James. It would be prettier towards our front entrance in the way that they have it face. But for traffic count reasons, and because we do have multiple school things happening on campus, it would be best if we could remove as much traffic and flip the orientation to where now the building would be facing Country Club instead of that back to Country Club.
So they won't be able to access from your drive.
They
to
would,
Country
but it would be
Club,
a supplemental. And we're not Xing that off of. It would be a supplemental rather than the main.
I'm like you, Mr. Mayor. I think you just let y'all work it out.
Where's that gonna put the gas pumps?
You know what? Honestly, we don't have a ton of opinion at this point, but that hasn't gotten to a point where we would have. And I think between the three of us, between the planning department and Harps, we can figure that out.
I was just willing to work with them and get it done, right?
Well, and the planning department made this very clear at one point, but something's going in there, as y'all made the point of just a few
Right.
minutes ago in the other property. Something's going in there. Harps is extremely easy to work with, and we want to move forward if we can with them.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak for or against? Yes, sir.
You know where that would put the gas pumps?
So kind of probably central in the site. And if it's possible to get a right sweep in only, we would love that. But I think that
For Dave
is,
Ward?
yeah,
Oh.
we would be willing to do that, the right turn in sweep. But I think with the three different organizations that have an input on that. I've heard that that's might be the most impossible thing.
Thank you. Any other questions? Council, back to you.
Make a motion to approve this conditional use request with all the conditions listed.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve this conditional use permit for Harps with all the conditions listed. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed.
Passes 7-0. Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance to amend the Conway zoning code for the purpose of regulating accessory dwelling units. And the only guy I know that can talk about this is standing at the microphone.
Now, I'm
Well-
sure there's lots of people that are very passionate about housing
zoning
affordability.
code, yeah.
in
Let me
this
look.
city.
Let me look. Let me look. Well, you go ahead.
So currently in the zoning code, we have recognized that there is a loophole for manager caretaker residences. The way it is defined in the zoning code, it essentially creates the ability for someone to put 2 housing units on any lot. The way in which this has mainly been used is on some very high-priced pool houses and whatnot. But when I realized that this provision existed, I said we probably need to take a look at that. In '94, I'm going to assume that Bill Polk, the original intent of that was for sort of caretaker units for things like self-storage or for multifamily. So part of the provision is restoring it back to that, to where it's allowed for certain types of uses, and then as a conditional use elsewhere. What this does do is kind of reform how they're treated, and accessory dwelling units are an incredibly popular thing across the United States. A lot of folks are very concerned about housing affordability, Conway included. And so a lot of ways this is treated or discussed as invisible density. It allows a homeowner to build a second very small unit on the back of their property and rent that out. So it can be used for caretaking of a family member. It can be used for housing a college student. It can be used for a variety of things. It has to have a relationship to the unit itself. The thing that is great about it is that when you drive down the street, it does not change the character of the way that when you look down the street, it continues to look like a single-family neighborhood. It's actually returning sort of development patterns back to where they were before zoning existed, before in the 1920s and 1930s when people had garage apartments and such in the backyard. It would be limited to, essentially, you'd have to maintain permanent residence. So when you built it, you would have to sort of provide documentation that you have a homestead tax credit for that property. So it's not going to be for somebody that, let's say they own 50 properties across the city and they're like, I want to put an accessory dwelling unit on every single house that I have. It would be limited to folks that are home owner occupied in that sense. So if they've got an unruly tenant, they're the ones that have to deal with the unruly tenant. But I think in terms of the aging population and increasing flexibility that we need to have to provide more options, housing options for folks, I think this is a really important thing.
A great mother-in-law quarters.
That's exactly what they are.
I already
Yes.
told my kids I get a granny pod, so I'm all for it.
You really believe that?
It's I mean, they're cut out of the wheel if I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah.
We have an ordinance to read for this item. It's ordinance 02309.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion or questions? Mr. Garrett.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Tucker?
Yes.
Ms. Webb?
Aye.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Passes 7-0. Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance to amend number 515A, Hospital Services of the Conway Zoning Code. And Mr. Walden, tell us what that code is and why we need to amend it, please.
Yeah. So in the process of recodification of the zoning code, we took a very, very detailed look at a lot of the provisions. And in looking at this applies to hospital campuses. So this would be only for Conway Regional and only for Baptist. And we looked at it and said, my word, I don't think that that provision has ever been followed in the zoning code before. And then started thinking through the process of, well, Baptist Hospital, it's out where there's no residences, so there's no one really that it needs to be protected from. Conway Regional, it falls largely within the old Conway Overlay District, which already has a lot of more strenuous regulations that protect the adjacent property in that area. So it's really an unnecessary provision that's just clogging up the zoning code, and so we wanted to get rid of it.
We have an ordinance to read for this item. It's ordinance 02313, I'm sorry, 02310.
Make a motion for the adoption of that ordinance.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance to amend the Conway zoning code, 515A for hospital services. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Garrett.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Ms. Tucker?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Jones? Ms. Webb?
Aye.
Passes 7-0. Mr. Hawkins.
Final item here, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance to amend Article Number 7, Board of Zoning Adjustment of the Conway Zoning Board. There's a lot of stuff on a lot of paper here, Mr. Walden.
Yes, so
Killing trees.
that's what I'm in the business of doing. I take down a forest every day. In the city's zeal back early 2010s to sort of modify the Board of Adjustment, there used to be a planning commission and there was a Board of Zoning Adjustment, and they were two different bodies. State law allows the membership of the planning commission to sit as the Board of Zoning Adjustment. Unfortunately, when that provision was changed, it basically just said the planning commission is the Board of Adjustment rather than saying the membership of the planning commission can sit as the Board of Adjustment. So that's kind of one of those things that needs to be fixed. There's supposed to be a meeting of the Board of Zoning Adjustment that has minutes. They open and close as the Board of Zoning Adjustment with all the membership of the Planning Commission, and then you have a Planning Commission meeting. It's a technicality. It's one of those things that's in state law. It's annoying. No one likes it, but it is something that's proper. So that was sort of the main intent of dealing with this. Additionally, it provides some additional criteria for examining variance applications, lines out some of the procedure in a more detailed manner, aligns the approval of variances reflecting back to what the more true intent of the measures in state law are. That's a big thing. It allows for special exceptions or administrative waivers. So I would say 75 to 90% of the variance applications that we get are probably approved. And so when you have continuing variance applications that you approve over and over and over again, that's a sign that you just need to change the code. And so what this does is allow the administrative official, planning director, planning staff to approve administrative waivers in a couple of instances. Let's say somebody builds a house and they built the house, and instead of being at the 25-foot setback, it is at 24.96 feet. When a bank calls up and they're saying, we want to close on the mortgage on this, they call the planning department and they say, we need a variance for this. And we're like, no, you don't. We're good. We're fine. It's built. We don't care. They say, no, we need a variance because what if it burns down? Is it going to be built at 24.96 feet from the street, or is it going to be built at 25? And we're like, okay, we'll go through and we'll process a variance application. What this provision does is to allow us to write a letter that says, nope, it's good. Go ahead. And so that would get rid of those. Additionally, we have some where it's an existing property and they're wanting to split it into two properties, but let's say it doesn't meet one of the setback requirements. So this would allow us to grant them a special exception in that situation to split the property without coming before for a variance application. That's one that we approve 100% of the time. So it's going to get rid of probably 75 to 90% of the variance applications that come before that. We're just creating bureaucracy and paperwork for people to go through, unfortunately.
So is there a limitation on how much you can approve? And how-
There's so on the setback, it's a 10% rule. So if it's 25, you can go up to
Two
two
and a half
two and a
feet
half
is
feet.
the most that you can do.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other thing in the last legislative session, there was a state law change. Before that legislative session, if the Board of Zoning Adjustment heard a case, that was the last time that the city ever touched it. It would automatically go to court from that point on if it were appealed. With that law change in the last legislative session, it provided the option for cities to allow appeals of the Board of Zoning Adjustment to go to the city council. And so this also includes a provision that then makes you all the last entity to touch anything before there's a lawsuit. So it's another fail-safe backstop in that situation.
I like that part of it, but I don't know if I like the first part of it. Giving us the right to just, I gotta chime it in on it. And we're trying to paperwork down and all next or whatever, but there's a reason why we had that stuff. Because people have voice from everybody, not from one person. That's just my opinion.
I think the practical impact of this is if the existing requirement is 25 feet, we can modify it down to 23.5 feet or 22.5 feet. If the existing requirement is 10 feet, then we can modify it down to 9 feet. So it's really meant to deal with changes that are largely imperceptible. That is something that the contractor didn't catch, inspectors didn't catch, our permit techs didn't catch, planning department that all the way through the line. This thing's been constructed, nobody's caught it, and it's a goof up, and essentially the only person that cares about it is the bank in that situation. That's really what it's meant to deal with.
And if I'm reading this part correctly, if there's not, it says no administrative waiver for a requirement that does not have a numerical standard. So if it's something else that's weird, like you said, it's not at 10% of 25 feet or something like that,
Yep.
then it's going to come back through the same process.
Or if the height requirement is 35 feet, then you could go up another 3.5 feet. That's the extent of it. What if it's beyond that 10% rule, then it automatically goes to a variance application in that
Right,
situation.
but you don't think that this is going to open a door for people asking for forgiveness rather than permission?
Not any more than it currently exists.
Okay.
I don't think someone should be reported to the line and not somebody catching it. I can vote. I think that's a reason.
We have an ordinance. It's ordinance 02311.
Motion to adopt the ordinance.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion or questions? Mr. Hawkins, you've been bringing on the ordinances tonight, haven't you?
Tell you what, I'll get overtime pay.
Mr. Garrett?
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
No.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Ms. Webb?
No.
Ms. Tucker?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
4-3.
4-3.
4-3 it passes.
That passes 4-3. All right. Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. Been a long night for you.
Hold on.
Yes, sir.
Thinking Minder's having heartburn.
So there's 4 yes votes.
Mhm.
But you need a majority.
Need a majority, or do you need a 6 for a quorum? I mean,
No,
6
You
six
got
is
a
just-
quorum, but
Yeah, I mean, we have a quorum.
we
but
need
do
a
you have-
majority vote.
What if-
You need 5 to pass.
Oh, of the whole
Oh.
council. Okay.
No attack. Can I vote on this? I will vote yes. passes.
We had something before. It was denied 4-3.
That was a conditional use.
Yeah.
Conditional use.
Conditional use as a different
Yeah.
animal.
You always need a majority to pass, unless a 2/3 is required, then it would take 6. But for any vote that the council to consider an ordinance or resolution, you have to have 5 votes. And unless it's unless it's for an emergency clause, for example, that's the only time the mayor can't vote.
So it passes 5-3.
Correct, you got 5 votes.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. Been a long night and you've done well.
Sir.
Next up, we have the Public Service Committee. We have an ordinance appropriating funds for Conway Station Parks for Parks and Rec. Derek, are you here to speak to this tonight? And Derek, while I have you coming up, I had someone contact me today. I know they're doing the work on the Veterans Monument there, but they said they have the bike pathway blocked at that very first bridge after you leave Gatling Park there. See if they can scoot that down at least to the next bridge, because that cuts out a pretty good section that people would still like to walk.
We'll get that taken care of.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anyway, you're up, Derek.
All right, I'm gonna be much faster than you. $750,000 for the A&P, from the A&P Commission for the turf project at Conway Station Park, and we're just needing to put the money in the right spot.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance 02312.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance to appropriate funds for Conway Parks Recreation for Conway Station Park. Any further discussion or questions?
I say run to the bank quick.
Ask you quick.
Mr. Garrett.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Miss Mel?
Aye.
Miss Webb?
Aye.
Miss Tucker?
Yes.
Miss Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
That passes 7-0. Don't do me that way. Next, finally, we have our last item for tonight, public safety, as consideration to approve an amendment to the agreement for the fire station, for station number 6, located 1835 South 90. Chief, you moving kind of slow. Is duck hunting kind of hard on you?
Back there.
Interruption.
It's not that, it's not even 8 o'clock yet. Come on.
I'm early to bed.
You ain't gonna put you in front of the line, man.
Do that.
That guy over there in the middle, man, that's who you need to talk to.
Now, as he said, our Station 6, located at Civil Defense Hill in South Donahue, we've been leasing the land from UCA since 2008. That lease is up for renewal, for a 5-year renewal, and we're just asking to grant that lease again.
Any changes to it, Mike?
I don't believe so. I asked Charles to look at it. It says this is exercising the third option of the lease. The way I read it, I'm not a lawyer. I like they may have to do something different at the end of the 5 years, but not on this one.
Okay.
Should be good.
I'm hopefully pretty sure UC will work with us in 5 years, so. Anyway,
Make a motion to approve this lease.
I have a motion and a second to approve this agreement. Any further thoughts or discussion or questions? Mr. Garrett.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Passes 7-0.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to adjourn if there's no more business.
Well, first, Ms. Webb, congratulations. Did very well tonight. We want
Thank
to welcome you
you.
again here.
Come back and do it again with us.
I can't wait. It was
More
fun.
Oh. No, I'm talking to him.
Oh, don't, he always had to put a little gig on me, so you're like, just ignore
You
it.
did better than I did. I didn't say a word for the first 6 months.
I've known him a long time. He is a knight.
We are
It's
adjourned.
accomplished.
Oh, yeah,
Definitely.
sure.